Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're plunging into something really profound and honestly quite heartbreaking. It's about how certain conflicts, well, they don't just stay contained, do they?
No, they absolutely don't. They sort of morph into something much, much bigger.
Exactly. They become these powerful symbols, these huge battlegrounds for grander ideological wars.
Yeah,
And it makes trying to resolve them incredibly difficult.
it really does. You end up with everyone just scratching their heads, feeling kind of helpless.
Yeah.
And what's truly fascinating, but also, deeply tragic, is how this transformation changes the whole conflict.
How so?
Well, when a dispute turns into a symbol, people aren't just arguing about, say, land or policy anymore. They're
Yeah.
debating their identities, their deepest values, maybe even the future of civilization as they see it.
Wow.
So the sides end up talking past each other. They're stuck in their own stories, their own narratives. They're not talking to each other about finding common ground.
And the consequence, well, our research really highlights this. The real human cost often gets lost, doesn't it?
Completely. The suffering, the displacement, the lives lost. It all gets overshadowed, sometimes even dismissed, when these big, abstract symbols just take over the whole discussion.
That's exactly why this deep dive feels so important, really, for all of us.
Yeah.
We want to explore how this happens, this almost gravitational pull that turns wars into these huge ideological fights.
Yeah, and why some global conversations feel so stuck, so intractable, and stir up so much intense emotion.
Exactly. And most importantly, we want to uncover some practical ways you can navigate these really symbolically charged discussions. Not just watching from the sidelines, but maybe helping to shift the focus back.
Back to the tangible realities, back to the people actually involved.
Yeah. Our mission today is to give you the tools to understand this dynamic, to see past the symbols, maybe find a path toward, more productive conversations. Okay, so let's start with right now. When you look at current events, it's kind of striking how often conflicts just immediately become these symbolic battlegrounds.
Mm-hmm.
Our source material really uses the situation in Israel and Gaza as a key example of this. The actual conflict. The daily life, the military stuff, the desperate humanitarian situation.
All of that.
It often feels like it gets completely swamped by what people think it represents, the big story they project onto it.
It does. And when you listen to discussions about Israel and Gaza, it's rarely just about the specifics there, is it? Or the immediate action.
No, it feels much bigger.
The research we looked at points to these two really dominant symbolic frames that people often just automatically apply.
Two frames.
Yeah, and what makes it so tough is that these frames are so different, they almost create two separate realities, two different ways of seeing the exact same events.
Which makes talking about it difficult.
Incredibly challenging. Forget resolution, even just having a real dialogue is hard.
So what's the first frame?
Okay, so on one side, for a lot of pro-Israel voices, what's happening in Gaza isn't just seen as like a territorial dispute or even just a fight against Hamas.
It's more than that for them.
Much more. For them, it often symbolizes a really critical front in what they see as a global fight against radical Islam.
Okay, so it's not just local.
Not at all. The perspective often widens out to see radical Islam as this existential threat, not just to Jews, but maybe to Christians too, to secular governments, to Western civilization itself.
So it becomes this huge, civilizational struggle in their view.
Exactly. It's not just a regional skirmish. It's like a chapter in this massive ongoing story.
And framing it like that,
Yeah.
well, you're not talking about normal security anymore, are you?
No, you're elevating it. It becomes existential.
Right. Survival is on the line.
The idea is that the survival of whole value systems, ways of life, maybe entire groups of people is at stake. It turns a specific conflict into this perceived battle for, humanity's future.
And that must have huge implications for what actions seem justified.
Huge. And this is where the symbolic framing gets really potent and, frankly, really dangerous.
How so?
Because if you truly believe the stakes are existential, survival against some kind of absolute evil, then almost anything can start to seem justifiable.
Even massive collateral damage.
Even devastating costs. Because if you think the alternative is annihilation, then those costs can be rationalized. It makes compromise almost impossible. It makes seeing the humanity on the other side incredibly hard.
Because they're part of the threat.
They're not just opponents. They become elements of this existential danger itself. It's a really powerful psychological frame.
Wow. Okay. But then there's the other side.
Yeah.
And they have an equally powerful symbolic frame, right? Also existential.
Absolutely. Equally powerful, equally existential, driving its own set of very deep convictions.
What does that look like?
So for many pro-Palestinian advocates, Gaza isn't just, a piece of land under siege.
No.
It's seen as the front line of a much broader anti-colonial struggle.
Anti-colonial, okay.
Yeah, this perspective frames the conflict as resistance. Resistance against occupation, against dispossession, against what some people call apartheid. It taps into this deep history of perceived oppression.
So it connects to other movements globally.
Exactly. It draws parallels with global movements for liberation, struggles against external control, historical injustices against indigenous peoples. The narrative isn't just about today, it's about centuries of power dynamics and the fight for self-determination.
So again, like the first one, it assigns this existential weight, but for totally different reasons. It's about liberation from history, not survival of civilization.
Precisely. Both frames feel absolute in their demands, just from opposite directions.
And that needs some...
It means resistance becomes paramount, a fundamental right for people striving for dignity, and this framing, too, can justify significant costs.
Because the struggle itself is seen as essential.
Yes, reclaiming identity, land, agency from this long history of perceived subjugation. Any action taken for liberation can be seen as a necessary part of this larger righteous fight. The key thing is, both sides aren't just describing the conflict.
They're defining it.
They're defining it through these incredibly powerful, deeply ingrained stories, each believing their big story is the absolute truth.
What's so chilling about this, and our research points this out again and again, is when each side truly believes they're fighting for that higher cause.
Yeah.
Whether it's Western civilization's future or national liberation. The justification for collateral damage, for human suffering, it just seems to become almost limitless. The human cost, the lives lost, the families destroyed, they start to feel like this sad but, necessary sacrifice for the bigger ideological win.
The individual faces just get blurred.
Yeah, blurred by the banner of the cause.
And this takes the conflict way beyond just security or territory. It makes it about fundamental values, core identities, those deep historical stories, even religious beliefs sometimes.
Which explains the heat. Right?
Yeah.
The intense emotion around these discussions.
Absolutely. People aren't just debating policy points. They're debating their sense of self, their history, their morality, their vision of the future. It feels like it's about everything.
What's at stake feels absolute.
Yeah, not just for them, but for humanity. And when the stakes feel absolute, compromise feels like, wow, like betrayal.
It really clicks into place then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When you think about it that way, you suddenly see why these debates feel so emotional, so circular, and just unresolvable.
Because they aren't really talking about the same thing.
Right. They're operating from these different, deeply held symbolic realities. Like you said, parallel tracks.
Yeah, two trains, full speed ahead, shouting across the gap, but never going to meet because they're on different lines, heading for different destinations.
Now, this whole thing, conflicts turning into symbols.
Yeah.
It's not new, is it? This isn't just a modern problem.
Oh, not at all. History is just full of examples. It's a pattern that repeats itself, where the symbolic meaning just completely overshadows the reality on the ground.
And looking back, well, it's sobering, but we can learn a lot, right? Even with hindsight.
Definitely. History gives us these stark, painful warnings about where these competing symbols can lead. The research we looked at has some powerful case studies.
Okay, let's dive into those.
They really highlight how this plays out and the devastating consequences when people are just talking past each other, trapped in their own frames. It's not abstract. It shows how suffering gets normalized.
Where should we start? Vietnam seems like a major one.
Yeah, let's start there. Vietnam War, 20th century. For the United States, Vietnam was seen predominantly as this crucial battleground against global communism.
Existential again.
Absolutely. It wasn't just about Vietnam itself. It was about this worldwide ideological war that policymakers genuinely believed threatened America.
The domino theory, right?
Well, exactly. The famous domino theory. The idea that if Vietnam fell, then Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, they'd all fall like dominoes.
So Vietnam became this linchpin.
A critical linchpin for global democratic stability in their eyes, a place where the U.S. had to make a stand, not really for Vietnam, but for the whole free world.
So the American view was totally detached from the local specifics,
Yeah.
focused on this grand, abstract battle.
Largely, yes. The stakes felt global, fundamental, highly moralized, and that led to decisions that prioritized this big ideological fight over, say, understanding Vietnamese society.
Like the bombing campaigns, the huge troop commitments.
Often driven by that macro-level thinking. But then you look at the other side. For the Vietnamese, especially the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong, the war meant something completely different.
National liberation.
Exactly. For them, it was about national liberation. It was just the latest chapter in this centuries-long struggle to get rid of foreign powers.
They fought the French, the Japanese.
The Chinese before that, now the Americans. It was, for them, a continuation of this long fight for self-determination, for sovereignty, against yet another foreign interference.
And the tragedy, as the source material puts it so well, is that with these totally different symbolic views, neither side really saw the peasants and the villages caught in between.
No, the symbols just got too loud. Washington, Hanoi, they were both so consumed by their big stories that they drowned out the reality of daily life and suffering. It's hard to fathom.
Both thought they were fighting for humanity's future.
Yeah, global freedom on one side, national liberation on the other. And in that ideological heat, the actual immediate suffering of millions, farmers, families, kids, it just became secondary, an unfortunate cost of a necessary fight.
Millions lost.
Millions dead, not just soldiers, but civilians from bombing, destruction, famine, displacement, all while the symbolic battle raged. That historical blindness, that inability to see past your own powerful story, it's a chilling warning.
It shows how easily the human part just vanishes from the equation.
Completely vanishes.
Okay, let's look at another example, maybe closer to home for some listeners. The Troubles in Northern Ireland. That felt so deeply personal, historical, tied to identity.
Absolutely. The Troubles, spanning decades. The conflict was just drenched in symbolic meaning on both sides. Incredibly complex.
So for the Unionists,
Yeah.
mostly Protestants,
For Unionists, yeah, predominantly Protestant, the struggle was fundamentally about protecting their British identity,
Sure.
keeping their ties to the UK, loyalty to the crown.
they saw themselves as British.
An integral part of Britain, resisting any push towards a united Ireland. That identity was deep history, culture, religion passed down. A united Ireland felt like an existential threat to their whole way of life, their heritage.
And then the Republicans,
Yeah.
mostly Catholic, a mirror image.
Pretty much a mirror image, yes. For Republicans, it was seen as a fight for liberation from centuries of what they saw as British domination, ongoing occupation.
They wanted a united Ireland?
Yeah. Seeing Northern Ireland as illegally partitioned, seeking unity with the Republic as the only path to self-determination, to fix historical wrongs. Their story was about resistance against a colonial power.
Fueled by history, the famine, Easter Rising.
All of it, civil rights movement, it all fed this sense of historical grievance and the symbolic fight for freedom.
But while these huge symbolic battles were going on, identity, history, religion, clashing the day-to-day reality for ordinary people, that was something else entirely, wasn't it?
Oh, completely. It was bombings, checkpoints, constant fear, mistrust, division.
Just exhausting, sounds like.
It was brutal, a grinding reality. Those deep identities and historical grievances played out in this protracted, incredibly violent conflict where the symbolic stakes just overshadowed the immediate, terrifying suffering.
Divided communities, constant threat.
Literal walls dividing communities, constant threat from paramilitaries, bombings, state repression. Think about being a kid growing up then, in Belfast or Derry. The abstract fight for identity meant concrete daily terror.
Checkpoints on the way to school.
Always worrying about loved ones. It really makes you think how different views of history, these powerful identity symbols, can fuel conflict today. The past isn't past. It's a living symbol consuming the present.
Which brings us to something more recent and equally devastating. The post-9/11 conflicts. Iraq, Afghanistan, again, different symbolic frames clashing.
Definitely. After 9/11, the U.S. government and many allies framed their actions in Iraq and Afghanistan as this global fight for freedom against terrorism.
A defensive war.
Presented that way, yes. Protecting American values, citizens hunting down attackers, spreading democracy. It was framed as good versus evil, freedom versus tyranny, a necessary response.
The symbols were never forget, defending freedom.
Those became the dominant narrative in the West.
But for the local populations, people in Iraq, Afghanistan, how did they see it? Their history is different.
Very different interpretations often. For many locals, especially as things went on, these interventions weren't seen as liberation. They felt like a new round of foreign occupation.
Based on their own history.
Yeah, rooted in experiences with other external powers, British, Soviets, the presence of foreign troops, foreign agendas being imposed. It felt like more outside interference. Local complexities, tribal dynamics often got overlooked.
Reinforcing the feeling of invasion, not liberation.
For many, yes, the symbols there were more about external control versus national pride, sovereignty.
And what's so tragic, a key lesson from the sources, is that both frames, global freedom fight, new occupation, were used to justify enormous violence.
The purity of the symbol seemed to excuse the methods on both sides.
And the consequences.
Devastating. An impossible situation for civilians. The research says it starkly. Shattered families, massive refugee flows. These became almost secondary concerns to the big ideological battles.
The real human suffering got deprioritized.
Displacement of millions, breakdown of society, trauma, the rise of new extremisms and the power vacuums, all often sidelined when symbols took over. It's a vivid illustration. When conflict gets defined by abstract ideals, grand narratives instead of people's actual experiences.
A human toll skyrockets.
Almost always, you really see the pattern. When symbols become the whole story, the only story that matters, people on the ground pay the ultimate price.
Okay, so hearing all these echoes from history, Vietnam, Northern Ireland, Iraq, Afghanistan, it brings us right back to where we started with Israel and Gaza. And suddenly, it makes so much more sense why conversations about it feel so unproductive, so frustrating, like they're just going in circles.
The patterns are right there. The clash of these huge symbolic narratives, it's playing out right now, in real time.
We've got those two main symbolic arguments creating these separate realities.
Exactly. One side saying this is about fighting radical Islam, an existential defense.
And the other declaring this is about ending settler colonialism, a fight for liberation and justice.
And crucially, these aren't just debating points. They're woven into people's identities, their sense of justice, their understanding of history, often their trauma.
They're not casual opinions.
No, they're deeply felt, fiercely defended beliefs.
And the critical point is, these arguments, they don't even overlap, do they?
Not really. They are, like the source says, parallel lines. You can argue forever, but they're designed never to meet.
Which is why it feels like shouting matches, not dialogues.
Exactly. There's no common ground because there's no shared understanding of what the actual problem is. Each side is trying to solve a different puzzle using totally different pieces.
Like a fundamental mismatch.
It's a psychological mechanism, really. The more you lean into the symbol, the more you identify with that big story.
The harder it is to hear the other side.
Yeah, the less capacity you have to hear the human reality on the other side. If you're absolutely convinced you're fighting for a global principle or against this huge historical injustice,
then the suffering on their side.
It gets rationalized away, dismissed as propaganda, maybe not even registered emotionally. It's cognitive dissonance, right? If my cause is righteous and existential, their suffering must be deserved or exaggerated or just unavoidable.
Which explains why it feels impossible to bridge the gap.
Because each side is basically living in a different truth, a different reality. It raises that question for all of us, you know? If we're all watching different movies with different scripts, how can we ever agree on the plot, let alone the ending?
That's a really powerful thought. Almost unsettling.
It is.
And that's why it's so important for you listening now to really evaluate the discussions you hear. When people are debating these things,
Ask yourself,
are they really talking about the same problem? Are they talking about the impact on civilians right now? Or are they battling over civilizational defense versus anti-colonial liberation?
or are they just talking past each other through those symbolic lenses?
Recognizing that dynamic.
Yeah.
It's not just academic. It's the first step to understanding why these talks get stuck and maybe, just maybe, the first step to changing them.
Becoming a more discerning participant.
More effective in these really vital global conversations. Okay, so we've laid out the problem, the history, the psychology, the consequences, which leads to the huge question. So what's the alternative?
Yeah, how do you actually break out of these symbolic traps?
How do we get past the shouting, the parallel monologues, and move towards something that actually feels like dialogue, something that might lead somewhere tangible?
Well, the good news is our source material doesn't just diagnose the problem, it offers a path forward, a clear kind of 3-step strategy.
Right.
It's a framework to navigate these supercharged discussions, designed to pull the focus back to the tangible, to the shared human stuff.
It's not about ditching the symbols entirely.
No, not at all. It's about understanding them, contextualizing them, using them as a starting point, not the end point. Think of it like a communication skill set.
Okay, step 1. This sounds crucial.
Step one is absolutely crucial, and it's a thing people often miss or even deliberately avoid in fights. You acknowledge the symbol.
You actually name it.
You actually name it directly, empathetically. Because if you just dismiss the other person's deep symbolic frame right off the bat,
Get shut down.
instantly, communication over. You've just confirmed their worst fears about you. So the research suggests specific phrasing, like starting with, I understand why this feels existential to you,
Okay.
why you see this as West versus Islam, or why you see this as colonialism versus resistance.
You're not agreeing with them?
No, not agreeing, not endorsing. You're validating that you hear the depth of their belief. You recognize how important that lens is for them. You're saying, I see this means something fundamental to you.
Why does that work? It feels a bit counterintuitive.
Because dismissing the symbol feels like disrespecting their core identity, their history, their whole worldview. That immediately triggers defensiveness. Walls go up.
But acknowledgement.
Acknowledgement, even without agreement, validates their starting point. It signals respect, creates an opening. Think about it. If someone told you your deepest beliefs were stupid, you'd shut down too.
Yeah, true.
This builds a tiny bridge of empathy. It says, I'm willing to see where you're coming from before I share my view. That's huge, not just for global conflicts, but any tough conversation. It creates space.
Okay, so you acknowledge the symbol, you create that space.
Go
What's
ahead.
step two? This is the pivot, right?
Exactly. Step two is the pivot. You ground the conversation in concrete human reality. Bring it right back down to earth.
Oh.
After acknowledging the symbol, you immediately shift focus from the abstract ideology to the concrete human impacts right now.
Asking specific questions.
Yes, specific questions about the tangible effects on actual people's lives. The sources suggest questions like, what does this mean for the families living in Rafah today?
Or the hostages.
For the hostages in Gaza, for their families waiting, for kids who've lost schools, homes, parents, or how's this affecting the elderly, people needing medical care?
Questions that focus on immediate, undeniable reality.
Exactly. Shifting from the grand, often unchangeable narratives to immediate, undeniable suffering and experience. These questions are hard to just brush aside.
And focusing on the families, the kids, the hostages, the lost homes. That builds empathy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Make it harder to dehumanize.
Way harder. It moves the conversation from abstract ideas to shared human experience. Even if you have totally different symbolic views, it's much tougher to deny or justify suffering when you're talking about specific, visceral details.
We all understand pain, loss, wanting safety.
Right. It fosters that potential for empathy. Because while symbols motivate, solutions usually come from tackling the immediate real-world problems affecting actual people, whatever their symbolic flag is. It gives you a shared reference point.
Okay, acknowledge the symbol, ground in reality. What's the third step?
Step 3 ties it together, adds nuance. Frame symbols as lenses, not absolute truths.
Lenses, not truths. Explain that.
It's a critical distinction. Symbols aren't objective facts about the world. They're interpretive frameworks. Powerful stories that help people make sense of chaos, right?
Yeah, we've seen that. They explain why people care so deeply.
Exactly. They give meaning, identity, purpose, especially in crises. But, and this is key, they shouldn't blind us to what's happening right now, on the ground.
So they're a way of seeing, not the reality itself.
Precisely. It's about holding both in view. Understanding why someone sees the world through that lens, grasping the depth of feeling tied to it.
Without letting that lens completely block out the immediate factual reality of human lives.
Yes. Recognizing symbols shape perspective and motivate action, but they're still interpretations, mental models. And the core principle here, the really powerful grounding statement from the research is this.
What is it?
Because at the end of the day, symbols don't die in war as people do.
Wow, that cuts through everything, doesn't it?
It really does. Strips away the abstraction, brings it back to the absolute core of conflict.
And it challenges you, the listener, to think about your own lenses when you look at these complex issues.
Absolutely.
To actively seek out that ground-level reality under the big narratives. To question how things are framed, challenge your own assumptions.
It's an invitation to be more critical, more empathetic.
And maybe more effective in understanding and talking about these huge global challenges.
Yeah.
Not just being informed, but potentially helping to bridge some of these divides. Hashtag, outro. So, where does this leave us? What's the takeaway? I mean, the challenge for all of us seems huge.
It is profound.
It's this constant need, isn't it, to navigate these powerful, sometimes deafening big stories, these identity narratives.
Without letting them completely drown out human suffering.
Yeah, it's a balance, a constant negotiation between the abstract ideas we believe in and the immediate, concrete reality of people's lives.
And the path forward, as we've unpacked today, it's clear, even if it's not easy.
Start with empathy.
Start with empathy. Take that crucial step.
Yeah.
Name the symbols driving the conversation. Acknowledge them.
But then
Return again and again to the reality on the ground, the actual impact on actual people.
that's when things can shift.
That's when conversations might just shift. From these abstract, often unwinnable ideological battles to real discussions about shared problems, tangible solutions that could actually make life better for people caught in the middle.
Shifting the goal from winning the argument.
To alleviating suffering.
This has been, well, a really critical deep dive, a stark reminder of these patterns. And it leaves me thinking, if we only talk about symbols, if we only fight over which banner is right.
Oh, probably always be at war, caught in those endless loops.
Exactly. If we talk about people, really talk about their lives, their suffering, their hopes, their shared humanity, maybe, just maybe, there's a chance for something different.
Maybe a chance for peace. And to build on that, real progress in these really stuck conflicts often doesn't start by winning the argument about whose symbol is right or whose history is the true one.
Where does it start?
It often starts by genuinely seeing and acknowledging the humanity on all sides, even when there's huge disagreement, deep grievances.
Recognizing that shared experience of being human.
Exactly. That shared experience transcends the ideological frames. And sometimes, almost miraculously, it can create a common language where before there was just noise.
So we invite you, our listener, to take this framework, apply it to the discussions you have, the news you see, the tough issues in your own world.
Try to be that bridge between the symbols and the reality.
Seek understanding beyond the slogans, beyond the ideological divides. Keep asking the hard questions. Keep looking for the truth on the ground.
And keep diving deep into the topics that matter. It's how we all become hopefully a bit more informed, more empathetic, and more capable in this really complex world.